Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 65 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on?
Man, it's a good day.
It's a good day in the neighborhood?
It's a good day in the neighborhood.
What makes it a good day?
I don't know.
You hate when I call you on the carpet like that, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Like, well, I don't know.
Like, don't dig too deep, man. Just take what I say and move on. All right, Gibbs, let's do Patreon. We've got a lot of new Patreon support and some new PayPal support as well. So we had on Patreon, Julia Brindle, Amber Scott Guerrero.
Yeah.
Big social media follower.
Absolutely.
Interactor. She jumped out at our highest level. Much appreciated. We had Anna Lee, Kiki.
Kiki?
Mm-hmm. Love that name. It just, how can you not feel light and happy when you say Kiki?
Yeah, it's just
Makes you feel
good. Yeah.
Michelle Billum, Ian Ford, Yasmin Chowdhury. That's a cool name too, Yasmin.
Chowdhury. Makes me hungry.
Why? Because you're thinking about chowder?
Yeah.
I do like a good New England chowder.
You do, don't you?
Man, I don't know why. There is just something about that. I've had some good corn chowders too, but well, now you got me hungry.
I didn't mean to do that.
So we had Sophie, Carol C. jumped up to our highest level.
Thanks, Carol.
Getting ready to see her at Crime Con.
We will see you.
Lindsay Moffat, Badger Furette. And I know you're digging this name.
I do, man. I like that. Badger. Wonder if that's the real name.
I don't know, but it's kick-ass if it is.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
If it is I'd have a tattoo of a badger like on my shoulder, you know?
Yeah.
Instead of the tattoo that I got right now.
Of a pelican. I still don't know why you have a tattoo of a pelican on your shoulder.
I have a pelican on my shoulder.
I'm not sure what it signifies. We had Michael Hopkins, has been a Patreon member, jumped up to our highest level, so we appreciate that. Sierra Hogan, Austin Williams, Thomas Butler, Julie Govern, and Amy Wisemantle.
Hey, there's old Wisemantle.
Again, saying the word old.
I mean, there's the Wisemantle.
And it's always when I say a woman's name. I know you don't mean it that way. I don't mean it. But it comes out that way.
I know.
And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs. This week we selected Deb Ryhall. Been with us a long time. Big supporter. And we just want to give a special shout out to Deb because that means a lot. And it means a lot to us for all the people that continually support us month after month. And then all of these new Patreon supporters that we get. We love the support.
Yeah, we do.
And it helps us keep doing what we're doing. And we got some PayPal love as well. We had Jennifer Murray, Allison Thompson.
Awesome.
And our favorite, Samantha S.
Samantha.
We love Samantha.
Thank you so much.
All right, Crime Con's coming up, Gibbs. Are you getting excited?
I'm really excited, man.
I am too. I think you and I should go down and get matching hats. Cowboy hats. And we'll just roll into Nashville like we own that son of a gun.
There you go. Get some 5-gallon cowboy hat or whatever.
I think they call them 10 gallons.
10 gallons.
If you just want to get 5 gallons, we can go with that.
Right.
But
get some Stetsons.
Get 2 gallon if you want.
Stetson hats.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've got like 3 Stetsons already.
So why you need another one? Why don't you just wear what you got?
I want to be matchies.
Matchies. We're not supposed to be twinning, man. What the hell?
I just want to make you uncomfortable. That's my goal in life.
Well, you just did.
I know I did.
Between that and trying to book the same hotel room.
Yep. I called up and I said, can I get in on the Gibby hotel room? No, I don't want one next to it. I actually want to reserve the same room.
Yeah. A few of that's going around right now.
Yeah. So if you are thinking about going to CrimeCon, stop thinking and sign up.
Do it, man. Come on down and see us.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a meetup on Friday night at least. Might spill over into Saturday morning, Saturday night. We don't know. But if you are going to go to crimecon.com, use our promo code TCAT, and get a little something off of your standard badge. We have a new episode out right now of True Crime All the Time. Make sure you check that out if you haven't already. This week, we're talking about David and Catherine Burney. So we're down in Australia, and this is a serial killing couple. And to me, Gibbs, it's a fascinating case.
Yeah, it really was. It just amazes me that, people that fall in love with each other or obsessed with each other can go to that extreme to decide to kill together.
Yeah. You basically have a situation where they would do anything. Well, one would do anything for the other.
Yeah, and I think...
Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think there's people that can be persuaded to do things.
I think so, too.
I just really
But to that level of depravity?
Yeah, that you would allow somebody to persuade you to kill.
Yeah.
Or that you yourself would sink that low to make somebody kill with you. You know what I mean? Force them to do... Not force them, but play the mind game or get into their head and make them...
To get them to do
that.
it, yeah.
It's pretty low all the way around, actually.
It's something, that's for sure.
Yeah.
In keeping with that theme, we are going to stay in Australia for this episode as well of Unsolved.
Good day, mate.
Maybe.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Shrimp on the barbie.
That sounds like just Southern.
Just Southern?
Like Southern United States to
I'm
me.
kind of Southern.
Yeah, people think you're from like Alabama.
I know they do. Maybe I am.
So we are talking about the Wanda Beach murders, also known as the murders of Marianne Schmidt and Christine Sharrock. Both were 15 years old. And these murders took place at Wanda Beach near Botany Bay, which is in Sydney, on January 11th, 1965. Marianne and Christine were the best of friends.
But, they really were. They were really close. They both came from some bad times in their lives. They both, and we'll talk about it, it's come up here in a little bit, but they both lost their dad. So they had that kind of bond,
So they had some things in common.
Absolutely.
And they formed a bond. Now, they lived on the same street.
And they lived on the same street as well.
And that helped.
Yeah.
They lived in West Ryde, which is in New South Wales. So we'll first talk about Marianne. She was originally from West Germany, moved to Australia with her family in September of 1958. Her dad's name was Helmut. I mean, if that's not the most German name I've ever heard.
It's pretty German.
I don't think that could be anything but German.
Schmidt, come on.
Yeah, Helmut Schmidt.
Helmut Schmidt. That's about as German as you can
German
go.
as it gets. Her mom's name was Elizabeth. She had siblings Helmut Jr., Hans, Peter, Trixie, and Wolfgang. So I get the feeling there, Gibbs, that Dad got to pick some, and it sounds like maybe he picked the boys' names, and maybe the mom picked the girls' names. That's what I'm going with.
But what about Wolfgang?
That sounds German too.
I know it.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, it's a good. I like the name.
No, it's a cool name, but I think Helmut named the boys and Elizabeth named the girls because the girls' names are Marianne and Trixie.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting from it.
I would never thought of Trixie. If there's a Trixie out there, I'm sorry. I just never thought of Trixie as it's not a bad name. It's just a name I haven't heard.
Gibbs, we've already lost our Carney audience. Now we're losing our Trixie audience. What are you doing?
I know. I keep taking our audience down.
Just because you haven't heard of the name before?
I know.
How could you not hear that? I've heard of that name.
Let's move forward.
So after they get to Australia, another child, Norbert, is born the following year. They settled into Temora, but in 1963, Helmut would move the family to Sydney after contracting Hodgkin's disease, and they would make their home in West Ryde.
That's a terrible disease, too.
It is. It's a horrible disease.
Yeah.
And it would take Helmut's life the next year in June. So you mentioned it up front. Both of these girls lost their father. Christine Sharrock lived with her grandparents, Jim and Jeanette Tague. Her father had died in 1953, and her mother, Beryl, remarried and was living in the northwestern Sydney suburb of Seven Hills. So Christine moves in with her grandparents by her own choosing. because apparently she didn't want to live with her mother.
You know, that happens in a lot of relationships. You know, you see that. So,
yeah, I don't know everything behind it, but apparently she preferred to live with her grandparents.
Felt more at ease living with her grandparents, it seems.
But she's living there with her grandparents when the Schmidts move in next door. So, I mean, they didn't just live on the same street. They lived next to each other.
They were neighbors.
And that's where the bond would start to grow. And, you know, like we said, they had a lot of things in common.
Right.
So she develops this very strong friendship with Marianne Schmidt. They are the same age. It would be on January 1st, 1965, that Christine and Marianne would visit the beach at Cronulla. This had been a very popular hangout for the Schmidt family.
Yeah, so on this date, Marianne and Christine, they go there. You know, it's New Year's Day, and they meet a couple of other 15-year-old boys and hang out with them throughout the day a little bit, and then they come back home.
And then the very next day, the Schmidt children go back to that beach, but without Christine. But that same day that they're at the beach, their mom is admitted to the local hospital. She has to have surgery. And this would leave Helmut Jr. and Marianne at home in charge of not only the house, but the rest of the kids.
So, I mean, forces them to grow up a little faster. You know, he's the oldest, and then, you know, we know Marianne's 15. So they get to be parents, you know, of the kids. Baby, full-time babysitters, I guess, for a little bit.
I don't know if get to be parents is how I would put it. I think they're forced to be.
Yes.
They're forced into that role. On Saturday, January 9th, Marianne and Christine asked Mrs. Schmidt if they could take the younger children to Cronulla that day, the next day, and she agreed. She said that was okay, but it ended up raining, so they didn't go. They would go the day after that, Monday, January 11th. Marianne and Christine would take the 4 younger Schmidt children. They would board a train to go to the beach, but they would have to transfer at Redfern.
Yeah, so when they were on the train, again, the 2 girls ran into those 15-year-old boys.
Same boys,
and had a conversation with them. And then, of course, you know, they went their separate ways when they got off the train.
They would eventually get to the beach around 11 a.m., but the beach was closed because there were very high winds that day. So what they ended up doing is taking the kids to the southern side of the beach, and they hung out by some big rocks. And Wolfgang is 8 years old, and he really wants to learn how to swim, but the beach is closed. So Marianne lets him swim in this small little area where the surf is coming in. It's pretty shallow.
Yeah, enough to get wet, enough to have a little bit of fun, but not worry about, you know, being taken out into the ocean.
Right, drifting away.
Yeah.
A few hours goes by, and they all get together, and they have a picnic lunch that they'd brought with them.
Yeah, I mean, they packed up from home. They brought some, I believe, Christine, she made some sandwiches and some fruit, and then Marianne, you know, she had a thermos full of, you know, this is Australia, so I'm not really sure what it's called, but it's like
Here we go.
It's some kind of like thick, sugary syrup. She puts this in the thermos, and you add water to it, and it's just like some type of tasty drink. I don't know what the heck. I'm thinking, is it like Tang?
It doesn't sound like Tang at all.
You know, I don't know.
Tang is not thick.
But
Tang is like
a thick sugary mixture that you add water to, thins it out and makes it taste good. This is what they're drinking. So anyway, they're at the beach. They're eating their sandwiches, their fruit, and you know, they also brought a little transistor radio to listen to whatever you were playing back in that day in Australia on your little transistor radio.
So they're having this lunch, and whatever this drink is that Gibbs tried to explain that I know we're going to get 8,000 emails from our Australian listeners that says it's this, you dumbass.
I know it.
Dumbasses.
I don't know. Syrup, add water.
I got that part. Sugary, thick, syrupy water.
Yeah, that's it. Yum. Drink up. Where's the Vegemite?
Where's the Vegemite? But Christine gets up from the picnic and she goes off by herself. And it's around this same time that Wolfgang, he sees another boy hunting something on the beach and in the surf. And it would turn out to be crabs. He's hunting crabs. And this is a boy that Wolfgang would see multiple times throughout the day. He sees the boy later in the day walking with Marianne and Christine. And then he sees him a third time, but the boy is walking by himself again. And this boy always had with him what appeared to be a homemade spear gun, and he had a fishing knife. This is what Wolfgang would say. Christine came back to the group after lunch, and then they all went for a walk on the sand hills behind the beach.
So they're at Cronulla, and they're going to go ahead and walk on down to Wanda. And in between, there's a really good stretch, miles of what I would call sand dunes, but there they call them sand hills. So that's where they're headed, and for kids, I mean, that's a lot of fun playing in sand dunes. Unless the wind is blowing as bad as it is, and that stuff will tear you up.
Yeah, and without really adult supervision. Right? They got two 15-year-olds letting them play, and they're having fun. It sounds like it would be a good day.
Yeah, until that stuff gets in your eye.
And you mentioned it, Gibbs. The winds were really high that day, and it's around 12:30 to 1 o'clock. They're about a quarter mile up the beach, past the Wanda Surf Club, when they're forced to take shelter behind one of these big sand hills, we'll call them. It's just too windy, and the kids are getting pelted. And while the kids are hunkered down, Marianne and Christine, they tell them to stay there. They're going to go back to the spot that they were at. They're going to get their bags, and they're going to come right back. And then they're all going to head home, right? It's just too windy.
Yeah. So when they were up at the other location, right, they hid their bags kind of like behind some rocks and things like that. And, that's where their money is. That's where their train passes to get back home, right? They're not going to make that 5-mile walk back home, not with little kids. Just no way that's going to happen. So they're going to go ahead and hike back up there and get their bags, come on back. And then as a group, they can go ahead and go home. That's the plan.
And they hadn't really made it that far down the beach. So it shouldn't take Marianne and Christine all that long, right? To go back, get the bags, make their way back to the children. Now, I say they haven't made it that far. It is about a half a mile away.
Yeah, and high winds.
It's going to take a little
sand blowing.
It's going to take a little bit.
Yeah, but it shouldn't take too long.
As the girls took off, one of Marianne's brothers told her that they were going in the wrong direction. But apparently they just turned to him and laughed and kept going. They probably thought he was wrong, or I guess they thought he was playing around. So the kids remained at the spot they were at until about 5 p.m.
So that's a long time waiting.
At least 4 hours, right? They're hunkered down behind this sand hill, waiting for their sister and their sister's friend. But they have to have sensed, Gibbs, that something was wrong, right? It's been 4 hours. So the kids go back to where the bags are. They don't see Christine or Marianne. So they get the bags and they take the last train home.
Yeah, luckily they were able to get that last train.
Because even then, they didn't get home till about 8 p.m. And it's not till 8:30 that night that the two girls are reported missing by Christine's grandmother.
Yeah, and I think part of the thought process is that, maybe the girls missed the train. Maybe they ran into some boys and were doing what teenagers do and just didn't get back and was irresponsible.
Well, I think you would have to hope that's what it was.
Yeah, because you got to remember the time frame too, right? I mean, we're in the mid 60s.
Oh yeah,
you didn't worry about too many things, right? I mean, at least
not
I know
the way you do today.
Yeah, I mean it's different. I mean, the panic would be sudden if it was today.
Yeah, and I'm sure there was some panic, but I agree with you. It wouldn't be like it was today. Probably, they probably would have thought, more like being irresponsible, probably would have been mad. You know, how could they have left their younger
brothers
siblings
and sisters, yeah.
to go off and hang out with boys or do whatever?
Right.
It's the next day, Tuesday, January 12th, that Peter Smith is walking along Wanda Beach in the Sandhills with his 2 young nephews. They were north of the surf club when Peter discovered what appeared to be, to him, a store mannequin buried in the sand. But as he gets down and he starts to brush away sand from the head of what he thinks is a doll, a mannequin, he realizes it's not. It's a real person.
Yeah, that'd be freaky. It really would, man. As soon as you touched it,
You would know.
touched her, you would know.
Yeah, you would know this is not a mannequin.
Yeah, this is the real thing.
So Peter calls police from the nearby surf club. And at first, Peter thought he had just found one body. And this would later turn out to be the body of Marianne. But as authorities get there, they're going to find Christine as well.
Yeah, I mean, when they arrive, you can clearly see Marianne's head, but then you can also see 3 individual feet coming to the surface because the wind's blowing, right? And that's uncovering some of the body that's laying there. So, I mean, they realize there's more than one person there. So as they uncover the body of Marianne, and now they know that there's another individual, and it turns out to be Christine. You got Marianne, she's laying on her right side with her left leg bent. Christine's face is pointed down. Her head is up against the bottom of Marianne's left foot. And the bigger thing is that they can tell that Christine at one point must have got away from whatever occurred there, and was the suspect caught up to her and dragged her back about 100 feet to where she was found. Because they had the tracks, and in the tracks there's blood within the tracks.
So police would find that Christine's skull had been fractured by a blow to the back of her head. She had been stabbed several times. Marianne's throat had been slashed, and she had also been stabbed a number of times.
One time right through the heart.
So this was a brutal attack on both girls. Their clothes had been both torn and also cut off in places.
Yeah, so I mean, you can tell that's somebody that's got rage. I mean, they're trying to tear the clothes off, and if they can't get them off that way, then they're going to come back and use their knife to cut them off.
And you can also tell by the way that the fabric is, right? A rip versus something that's cut with a sharp instrument. Authorities also were able to figure out that the suspect or suspects, whoever committed these murders, had attempted to rape both girls. Semen was found on both victims when they did the autopsy. However, both of their hymens were still intact. So I'm assuming, Gibbs, that's how they get to attempted rape.
Right.
They believe that there was attempts were made, but they were not penetrated.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's where I say to me, it's still rape,
Oh, it's... Yeah.
In my book, it's rape. So
I get you.
But
I get you.
I mean, medically, I understand what...
They were sexually attacked for sure.
Yeah, sexually
if
assaulted.
If it's the definition of rape, I don't know what that is for sure. The autopsy report would also reveal that Christine had a blood alcohol count of 0.015.
So that's like having, two glasses of wine, maybe a big old beer,
But Marianne had no alcohol in her system whatsoever. The autopsy photos showed that Marianne had been stabbed over 25 times, and her throat was slashed so severely that she was nearly decapitated. So again, I can't stress how brutal.
It's a violent crime.
Yeah, of an attack this was. The investigators searched the beach and the surrounding areas. They were looking for weapons, probably more specifically the murder weapon. And my thought, Gibbs, is that they had to be thinking they were looking for either a knife or some other similar type object because of the wounds. Obviously, they're not looking for a gun because there's no gunshots.
No. I mean, the girls were stabbed and, slashed and things like that.
But investigators don't have any luck finding weapons in their initial search. So what they decide to do is have the sand at the murder scene sifted. And they found actually a number of things, but the biggest item that they found was a knife blade. And this knife blade had blood on it, but investigators are not going to be able to tie the knife blade to the two murders. And I want to go back to this alcohol content, Gibbs, for just a minute, right? Christine has a blood alcohol count of 0.015. And we talked about the fact that Christine got up while they were having the picnic and she took a walk by herself. There's really no evidence where she went during this period of time, but I think the thought is that she had consumed alcohol and some food.
Well, and they know she had food because when they did the autopsy and looked at her contents of her stomach, there was celery and cabbage. And they know that that's not what was on the menu in the picnic box, that the basket that they brought, right? They had some sandwiches and some fruit. So she had to get this somewhere else when she was walking around. So the assumption is wherever she got her alcohol, they had some food, maybe some of these Chick-O rolls, which are, from what I understand, they're kind of like a egg roll, spring roll, something we see here where it's just stuff with celery, cabbage, maybe a few other items. And she ate one of those and drank most likely a beer.
Investigators also concluded that the last person to see the girls alive was a local fireman by the name of Dennis Dostine, who just happened to be walking nearby with his son, and he saw the girls in the distance walking near the north area of the surf club. He recalled them walking fast and that one of the girls was checking behind her almost as if someone was following them. But he didn't see anyone following behind them. Funeral services for both girls were held on January 20th, and it was at that time that a $20,000 reward was posted. Investigators would come out the next year in April of 1966 and say that they had interviewed over 7,000 people in this case, making it the largest investigation in Australian history at that time. But even after all of those interviews, they didn't really have any leads in the case. And eventually it would go cold. Now, this case has been looked at a number of times. It was reopened in 2007 for some DNA testing because obviously by that time, Gibbs, DNA had progressed by leaps and bounds.
Sure.
I mean, it wasn't even around back in 65. A piece of one of the girls' clothing had blood on it, and the blood was confirmed as coming from a male, but that's really all the testing could provide.
So, I mean, we say leaps and bounds, and it really was. But like we've always said, the quality of the sample as years go by depletes, and it makes it difficult to really do much with it.
Well, it had been 41 years.
Yeah, that's a long time.
42 years between the time that the murders occurred and the time that they were doing this DNA testing. I don't care how well you preserve it. You can't keep that pristine.
Right.
In 2012, they tried testing some blood that had been found on one of the girls' jeans, but they were not able to find a match. But this is probably one of the best pieces of evidence that they have, right? Obviously, it's a good enough sample that they were able to test it and run it against, run it through the database. So I think Gibbs, investigators are hopeful that this piece of evidence may someday yield a hit.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, between the evidence that they have and I mean, like you said, they interviewed 7,000 people.
That is a lot of
That's
people.
a lot of people. I mean, there were even to the point there was 5 guys that would come out to say they did do it. But we know all about that. I mean, and they were able to discount those guys away. They didn't have anything to do with it. They were just trying to. And why do people do that? Why do people say that they did the crime when they actually didn't? I never understand that. But they want that fame, I guess. So that.
There's only a couple reasons to me. Either they want to be infamous.
Yeah.
They're looking to be incarcerated for whatever reason.
Right.
To have regular meals and a roof over their head. That could be a reason.
Could be.
Or you do have some people that are mentally ill.
Yeah.
And that plays a factor.
Yeah. And to that point, I mean, this is a fairly popular area for people, and you know, when the police did investigate that time frame, you know, there was a couple guys that were going around that day before, the day of, the day after, going around asking women if they wanted to have sex with them. There was a report of a guy naked walking around, a report of another guy just randomly masturbating up and down the beach. So, I mean,
it's a weird tour, a couple days.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got that kind of stuff going on. A lot of the reports that the one boy that they saw on the beach, that Wolfgang saw, was described basically as a blonde hair surfer. The problem with that is about every boy on that beach is a blonde-headed surfer. So, you know, it was just really difficult for them to narrow down on anything. So, but they did have some suspects.
In July 2014, police said that a semen sample taken from Marianne's body had been lost and could not be located, even though they had done an extensive search.
I never understand how that happens.
I don't either.
You know, evidence room.
It's a room.
Up. I mean, I get it, 40 years. So at some point, maybe you move locations, move buildings, you know, floors, whatever. But I would think you would protect everything. And I would think that sample would be with everything else. So someone would have to reach in, take the sample out, and not remember to put it back in.
Yeah. But isn't it strange how many cases that we talk about that are unsolved where what you would think would be a pretty damn important piece of evidence is somehow mysteriously lost. So you mentioned suspects, Gibbs, and now I think is a good time to start talking about some. But before we get into people that have been named, I got to go back to this boy. You know, the boy that Wolfgang says that he saw was carrying what he says was a homemade spear and a knife.
Right.
He saw him a number of times.
Yeah, he said 3 times.
And one of those times, the boy was with Marianne and Christine.
Right.
To me, you would have to think that this boy, if the police could figure out who he is somebody that they would love to have talked to.
Yeah, and I think they would love that too. But again, he's described as the blonde hair surfer boy type of look, right? So that's going to be tough. And then the other problem is that the other siblings, they don't know what Wolfgang's talking about because they don't recall that at all. And that throws a little wrench into it, you know, with the police.
And it would. You would think if Wolfgang saw this boy 3 times, at least one of the other kids would have said, oh yeah, I remember that. I saw him too, or
right. And the other issue is that, you know, Wolfgang, besides talking to the police about it, really didn't talk to his siblings about it. I mean, again, he's a little boy, so maybe his imagination got away from him, but maybe it didn't. Maybe he did see what he saw, but his siblings say otherwise.
And I do think that would make it tough for police. But I did want to talk about that boy because I wish we knew more about him. He seems like somebody that may have been involved in this.
It could have been.
Just from the fact that, and again, I'm making an assumption. He's got a knife, a fishing knife.
Yeah.
Which is probably very sharp.
Yeah.
And we talked about the fact that one of the girls was nearly decapitated.
Right.
We know, based on if Wolfgang is correct, he was with the girl. So he's very interesting to me. So the first person to talk about is a man named Alan Bassett. He was convicted for murder in 1975. And the reason why Bassett's name is brought up is because he made a painting. And it's a very disturbing painting. So he gives this painting to a Detective Johnson. And Johnson had worked on the Wanda Beach murder case. He knew all the details. I mean, all the details, right? The ones that only the police know, the ones that are kept out of the media. Detective Johnson would say that there's no way that Alan Bassett could have had the type of knowledge about this murder to paint the details that he did in this painting from his jail cell. And we have to talk about what's in this painting. So some of the details in the painting are the long trail of blood that led back to the bodies. And Gibbs, you talked about it, right? Police theorized that Christine was dragged back, that she had somehow fled and was dragged back to where her body was ultimately found. Well, this trail is depicted in this painting. The broken knife blade that was found by police was also portrayed in the painting.
Yes, I think it's interesting. I mean, for him to paint this, I mean, this is information that nobody knew besides the police. It wasn't information that was pumped out there onto the streets. So
this is a good time to talk about why he was in prison, when he was put in prison. So Bassett was put in prison for murdering a 19-year-old woman named Carolyn Orphan in June of 1966. And this is important because we know that the girls were killed in January of 1965, which means that this man was out. Bassett received a life sentence for the murder of Carolyn Orphan, but he was released in 1995. Now, later in life, Detective Johnson would write a book about this case, and in the book, he would include his beliefs, his theories about who he thought committed the murders. But before he could publish the book, he was killed in an accident. That is very strange.
yeah, I thought it was too.
That would be, I don't know, an amazing coincidence, I guess. The timing of it is just very odd. But there were a lot of other detectives involved in the Wanda Beach murder investigation that, in their professional opinion, didn't agree with Detective Johnson and his thoughts on the case and who committed the murders. But there was one person that did believe in Johnson's theory, and it was a crime reporter by the name of Bill Jenkins. And he would essentially echo Detective Johnson's claims in a book that he wrote. He devoted a whole chapter to the Wanda Beach murders. And in this chapter on the Wanda Beach murders, he writes about the theories of Detective Johnson. He writes about the painting and about Alan Bassett. Alan Bassett, after getting out of prison, he would eventually take this writer to court for defamation, but it really never went anywhere. And Alan Bassett has voluntarily given DNA samples to clear his name. So I think, Gibbs, although the painting is strange, or I should say the story about the painting, if everything that Detective Johnson says is correct, it's very strange and very odd. But I don't know how much more you can do to clear your name than to voluntarily give a DNA sample.
I mean, right there, I mean,
it's not something you would do if you had committed these murders.
yeah, if you even thought you could possibly be tied to it, you would not do it. So, I mean, you're just throwing it down saying, I didn't do it. Here,
right?
Whatever you need.
Now, another person that we need to talk about is Christopher Wilder. And we mentioned this up front, right? Christopher Wilder is the beauty queen killer, known as the beauty queen killer. We did a whole episode on him for True Crime All the Time. And we did talk a little bit about the Wanda Beach murders in that episode. because just a couple of years before the Wanda Beach murders occurred, Wilder had been convicted of a gang rape on a Sydney beach. And it was, this conviction that led police to take a look at him as a suspect. But Wilder immigrated to the United States in 1969. And later he would become the infamous serial killer in the 1980s, known as the Beauty Queen Killer. Wilder was killed in April of 1984 in a struggle with police in New Hampshire. But I just don't think, Gibbs, in the couple of times that we've talked about him, that authorities could ever put anything together, or at least nothing strong enough to tie him to the murders. But I also think there's a lot of people that think it definitely could be him.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there's some possibilities there. So
because of the similarities of some of the other things that he is known to have done in his life, and the fact that he was in the Sydney area at the time that the murders occurred, and on top of that, the fact that he had been convicted of, heinous crimes, specifically on a Sydney beach. There's a lot of smoke there. I just don't know if there's any fire is the problem. And then a third man to talk about is Derek Percy. And it really didn't come out until the late 90s that there was maybe a possible connection between Derek Percy and the Wanda Beach murders, or that anybody was even looking at him. I guess I should say it that way. Percy was put in prison in 1969 for the murder of a child on a beach in Victoria. He was considered a very dangerous man, too dangerous to be released from prison, and I think he's the prime suspect in a number of child murders in both Melbourne and Sydney. But Percy died from cancer in 2013. But it would come out later that at the time of the murders, he was considered a suspect, and he was pretty high on the list of suspects by police. And what made him such a viable suspect at the time was that police were able to link Derek Percy to the location of the murders on the date that they occurred. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think it is.
Now, you could link a number of people to the location of the murders on that date, right? We talked about how busy that beach was, how many people were around that area on that day, but how many people have the background and the record of heinous crimes that Derek Percy does? The problem is they weren't able to link him by any other means. So they have him in the area, but he's not linked by blood, by DNA, by semen. They haven't been able to link him in any other form or fashion. Authorities hoped that he would make some confessions on his deathbed, but he never did. But you have to look at that guy as being a very interesting suspect in this case.
Yeah, I think so. Out of 7,000 people that interviewed, to have these three suspects is pretty good way to narrow it down.
Yeah, and I would really say two, right? You got to take Bassett out completely.
Yeah, I think so. After the fact that he was willing and able to give up any sampling that you wanted.
Yeah.
It's hard to fight that.
In the beginning, I think they would have looked at him as an interesting suspect, but once cleared, I think you take him out. Now, there are some other cases with possible links to the Wanda Beach murders. The first is a very well-known case, and that's the disappearance of the Beaumont children. And I'm sure Gibbs will probably do that case at some point. It was highly publicized. And I think at the time, police thought there may have been a connection to the Wanda Beach killer. And there were three Beaumont children, Jane, Arna, and Grant, three siblings that disappeared from a beach near Adelaide, South Australia in January of 1966. Now, at the time they disappeared, they were 9, 7, and 4. So a lot younger than Marianne and Christine. But this was a huge case. And we won't dive into it because, like I said, we'll probably do a whole episode on it. But it was a national case. And it's one that I think it changed people. It changed the way that people parented.
Yeah, I think going through the Wanda Beach murder and then this, and as far as Australia goes, it was probably the big movement that they needed to see about, keeping your kids a little closer. We did the Unsolved case up in Michigan with the Oakland
County.
Yeah. And that changed things.
We talked about that then. It was almost as if that was the end of almost like of an innocence,
yes.
Right? No longer could you just let your kids go down to the store.
Yeah.
And I think Wanda Beach and then Beaumont, it had an effect like that.
I think so. I think it did too.
Parents, they didn't trust that they could just let their kids go unsupervised. And then there were 2 other murders, far less well known, that could have possible connections. So we'll talk about them briefly. January of 1966, a cleaning woman named Wilhelmina Kruger was killed in Piccadilly Arcade in Wollongong. Her body was discovered by a butcher when he got to work. She'd been strangled and mutilated. I think police believed that it could have been committed by the Wanda Beach killer. If nothing else, Gibbs, for the fact that it occurred in the same area about a year later. And then the next month in February of 1966, a prostitute named Anna Dalinkoa, she went missing after leaving a nightclub. 10 days later, her mutilated body was found by a truck driver at the side of the road. Now, her murder was linked with that of Wilhelmina Kruger, which I think makes a lot of sense. They happened very close together, but police also thought that, maybe this was the Wanda Beach killer coming back a year later and committing more murders. But I don't think they have any proof of that. I think it's purely speculation.
Yeah, it's easy to box that in too, like that.
But that's it. That is the case of the Wanda Beach murders. It's a sad case because of the age of the victims. And it's also hard for me, Gibbs, just because, man, you just want some answers. On some of these unsolved cases, you just want one day for something to break. The problem is we're talking about 1965.
Yeah, it's a long time ago, man.
So 53 years have gone by.
Yeah.
If something hasn't broken by now, is it really going to?
Probably not.
And that's the sad thing that I think about in some of these older cases that we talk about. If this was a case that happened 4 years ago, okay, maybe I think we got some time here.
Well, and then, so let's just say the suspect was 20 years old at the time.
He'd be 73 years old.
Yeah, so is he even still alive? Who knows?
Yeah.
Because
when you get to this point, right, this many years on, you really only have a couple things. You have something in the area of forensics is going to break, DNA, something like that.
Right.
But it hasn't. Or you have somebody that on their deathbed
confesses
and it's solved that way. But as time goes by, all of that stuff becomes less likely, I think.
What are you going to confess on your deathbed, man? What are you holding?
Well, if I told you now,
defeats the purpose.
I wouldn't have anything to confess on my deathbed.
They're going to have to get a steno pad out.
Yeah. I'm going to need a court reporter. To take down all my confessions.
Yeah.
No, if I confess it now, then what would I have left to confess on my deathbed?
That's right.
All right, Gibbs. We've got some voicemails.
Let's do it.
Let's do those.
Hi, guys. My name's Alice. I am a freshman in San Francisco, and I just want to say that you guys have really helped me a lot. Like, stay away from shady guys and never, ever, ever go hitchhiking. Also, I just want to say that I am totally Team Gibby. However, I mostly like girls. But on a different topic anyways. Keep your own time ticking. Bye.
So thanks, Alice. Like the voicemail and stay away from the rabbit holes. That was my little Alice in Wonderland kind of.
Oh, that was kind of funny.
Yeah, and thanks for being Team Gibby, and good luck at college.
I think our demographic is skewing younger.
It is.
We got some people in college.
Yeah, that's great.
How about that?
Yeah, do well.
Hi, it's Lisa calling from Jersey City. I love you guys. I just got turned on to the podcast, and I just listened. So I'm actually listening to a bunch of stuff from 2017, and I just listened to the Amityville show, which was fab. And I wanted to just weigh in on a couple of points, one of which is that the fact that everybody in that house was on its stomach, to me, is absolutely indicative of the fact that they were all awake. Because I think, Mike, you had challenged Gibby on how people sleep, and there was a huge study in the Times about sleep positions, and the majority of people sleep on their backs, and in accordance to this study, and then the next position is on their sides. Very, very few people sleep on their bellies, except for infants, believe it or not. So the fact that they were all on their stomachs means they all woke up. I don't know how he handled it. If they all woke up, he would have to, and they all overwhelmed him, he would have to somehow commandeer each person back to their room. And I do think a gunshot would wake him up. I think there might be some evidence that someone was with him, but I don't think it was the sister, because I don't think the sister was problematic.
All right, Lisa, thanks for the voicemail. I did have to cut that one down. It was very, very long. But that Amityville horror episode, Gibbs, it sparked a lot of social media posts, and especially about the sleeping positions. There were a lot of people that said they slept on their stomach. I was surprised by how many people said that they did. Now, it's been a long time since we've done that one, but I do remember that part of it.
Yeah, I do too.
Hey, Mike and Gibby, this is Sean from Airdrie, Alberta, Canada. Just calling in to say I love your show. Got some suggestions for you guys. You should look into the Douglas Garland's case and the case of Punky Gustafson. Both Canadian cases that are really interesting. Keep your own time ticking, boys. Keep those pendulums swinging.
I like that. He goes pendulum swinging.
Yeah, I got my pendulum swinging all the time.
But those are some good cases that we'll check out. Gibbs, we haven't been back to Canada in a little while, so I'm sure we'll make an appearance there pretty soon.
Yeah, I haven't had to make a run there yet, but...
Across the border?
Yeah, never know.
Are you allowed to cross the border?
Well, the way I go.
Oh, yeah,
I don't like screaming out.
With your skills.
That's right.
All right, everyone. We appreciate it. That is another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.